Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth, another podcast by Dr. Leslie Phillips.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie. My name is Dr. Leslie Phillips, and I am your host. And I'm going to introduce you to our guest now, and his name is Gary Borborf. And Gary, he has a bachelor's degree in philosophy from the University of British Columbia. And he has a master's degree in psychology from the Pacifica Graduate Institute of Santa Barbara. And he's also the author of a book called Crop Circles, Jung, and the Reemergence of the Archetypal Feminine. Gary is an expert on archetypes and how we, by being conscious of our own archetypes, can become empowered to take charge of our lives. Welcome to the show, Gary. Did I miss anything from your bio?
That was perfect, Leslie. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, you're so welcome, Gary. I'm fascinated to learn more about what you're all about. I did take a good look at your website before meeting you on the show today, and one of the things that I really loved was all the quotes that you have on the show. And one of the quotes that I really liked reading was by Carl Jung. And it said, "Called or uncalled, the gods are present." And I was wondering what your take on that quote was. What do you think he meant by that quote?
Yeah, well, he means that all the time these kind of inner psychological powers are moving through us, whether that's consciously or unconsciously. And, when he says called or uncalled, the gods are present, what he's, really referring to, that's the core of the work I do, because these archetypal powers in us, in our psychology, are present all the time, and we relate to some of them really well, and we push other ones down in the cupboard and try and, keep them unconscious. There's parts of human nature that we're really good with, and there's parts of human nature that we're not so good with, and, the psyche always wants us to grow and become more fully human over the course of our lives, and so that means accommodating these different gods more consciously, learning, figuring out what are our gifts, what are our best qualities, what gods do we relate to inside us the most, and which qualities do we maybe scapegoat, or they're in our shadow and we say that that's a bad thing to be. So, the full palette of human experience, nobody comes in mastering that right away. We're all picking up pieces. So that's what I think about when he talks about that quote, and that's really what the work I do with archetypal nature is all about.
Right. So really, the gods that are being referred to, we're thinking of them as an aspect of ourselves.
Well, it's an aspect of nature. So, and I really think of nature as, bigger than the human for sure, and that, in archetypal nature, the things that we explore are these qualities, these powers, these archetypes, that you see them in animals and bugs, and there's army ants and nurse bees, and there's different qualities of archetype in the whole of nature, and it's definitely inside the human psyche, but the human psyche is a product of nature.
Mm-hmm. So you've probably already gone some way to explaining to us about what an archetype is, but could you sum it up in a couple of sentences, help the listeners understand what we're talking about when we're talking about archetypes?
Sure. When Jungians talk about archetype, the broadest sense of it, in which any kind of a complex or an inner, an inner pattern or a myth or a folk story, a psychological problem, all of these could be archetypes. All of the myths of our history, all the folklore, those are all archetypes. But in this work, we mean something more specific. And, there's some archetypes that have more to do with our lives than others. And so, Jung pointed out the importance of the shadow and what he called the anima and the animus, our inner feminine and masculine, and different archetypes like that that are more important. Well, in archetypal nature, we focus on 4 archetypes, 2 different poles, 2 different axes of archetype, and that we believe that these are more important, that if you look at people's lives, you see a couple different archetypes that are going on that are really at the forefront of their lives. And so that's what we mean. When we talk about archetype and archetypal nature, we mean these very few, 1 or 2 qualities, motivational patterns. You can call them like an inner psychological structure. They're the kind of pathways that our libido and our energy flows most easily. That's what we mean by archetype, that certain qualities in us we're good with, and then there's other ones that are in the shadow and we aren't so good with.
Okay. And how does knowing about my archetypes help me?
Well, what I believe and what Jung and Antonia Tony Wolff, who developed the system that I use almost 100 years ago, what they saw was that, like I said, most people have 1 or 2 main archetypes that are playing through their lives. And, if you're not conscious of that story, then it can be playing you more than you're playing it. If you're going to maybe miss the shadow quality of your archetype, you're not going to understand the mythical and historic way that this pattern can play out, both positively and negatively. But if you really get your archetype, then you can own and say, these are my good qualities, this is my potential, this is my strength, this is my possible weakness. When you know which archetypes are yours and which ones are more difficult for you, you have the self-awareness to understand and say, oh, this is an area of my life I might be screwing up. And, Jung was really clear trying to tell people that, the things that we don't make conscious in our lives, they're going to drag us down. They're going to drag us into more and more trouble until we start figuring them out. The psyche always wants to grow into more of who we are. And if we're resisting that process, it's going to give us difficulty and disaster even in our lives until we start figuring it out. And so owning archetypal quality is owning a big, big chunk of human nature that is yours, that is yours to say, this could be your gift. This is the thing that you do really well in the world. And if you can recognize that, you can, make a place for it and fulfill your potential. And if you neglect it, you can have a sort of an endlessly difficult and unfulfilled life. And, the work of archetypal nature for me is helping people identify who they are themselves and what gives them the deepest satisfaction and fulfillment in their lives. And that's what we try and do.
Mm-hmm. So it's really giving people a framework to understand themselves and understand their behavior patterns in the world. And by having that framework to operate within, it helps you to be more consciously aware, and you gain a deeper understanding of who you are, and you have a system for watching out for the parts of yourself that you're in denial of or that you are repressing.
Yes, or you're unaware of, yeah.
Great, and so I can
That's right.
I can see going from there how this has the potential to help people fulfill their potential, because it helps them start to see what their strengths are, what they can expand and what they can emphasize, and it helps them start to see what their challenges are. Now, I also understood from your website that one of the ways in which you believe this work helps people is that it helps them in their relationships with others. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that this work does for people is gives you a better understanding of other people. One of the things that we do in life is that we project, we imagine that other people want all the same things that we want. And, that's just not true. There's different kinds of people. There's people that relate to different archetypes and that live very differently than we do and want different things out of life. And when you understand your archetype, you understand, well, no, this is what I want, but maybe somebody else wants or needs something different from me. And that's tremendously helpful with all of our relationships, our business relationships, our family relationships, our personal relationships. And in the personal, it's very powerful because very often we're kind of unconsciously motivated to choose partners that are opposite to who we are, including opposite personality type and opposite archetype. And one of the things really interestingly in Jungian psychology we find is that when you look at people's dream life, their inner world, their inner masculine and feminine figures, we find that the inner figure is very often opposite personality type and opposite archetype to who we are. So when we meet that person in the world, we think, oh, here, this is the one, this is my beloved, when in fact what we're seeing is our inner opposite. And when you understand this archetypal pattern, the archetypal nature system, you see, oh, that's my opposite system, my opposite there, and you can be more conscious about, do I want to be with this person or not, and what that might entail, because you understand the qualities of that opposite so much better. So it gives you a real roadmap around human relationships and lets you negotiate the kind of dating and romantic choices much more, consciously and with greater awareness. And, very often the way that people date under different archetypal preferences is very different. One of the archetypes in our system is the warrior and the Amazon. And, as a guy, if I'm trying to date an Amazonian woman, a woman who, finds satisfaction through the warrior Amazon archetype and likes to go out there and get things done and be, excellent and proficient and have prowess, and whether that's in business or the arts or music or whatever the form may be. One thing we find is that, the Amazonian woman, she definitely wants to flirt through competition. She wants to have, that romantic early stage dialogue be kind of a little bit kind of punchy on the shoulder kind of competition piece. And if you're trying to just really kind of push her into a more romantic kind of standard dating, dinner and a movie kind of model, she might feel, no, I'm not ready for that, and pull back. So there's all kinds of depth of understanding that you get when you know these different archetypes about how to proceed in the relationships with all kinds of different people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's quite fascinating. And you covered a lot there, and I can definitely see that, it's definitely true that we do tend to do that projection thing where we expect, because I like this or I want this, that other people will be the same. And obviously they're not. One question that sprung to mind when you were talking about these polar opposites of archetypes and how we have an inner opposite to our external archetype, was that because one of the ways I understand this world is in terms of duality. This is a dualistic world, and it's full of opposites. Everything in this world, there's an opposite pole. It's kind of what planet Earth is about. And we're here to balance and harmonize those opposites. So on the one hand, I can see that an archetypal opposite in a relationship might be more fireworks than than being in a relationship with someone of the same or similar archetype. But at the same time, wouldn't the opposites help each other grow and rebalance themselves more?
It's what you're talking about is a very complicated point, but there's a couple different ways that it can go, right? If you're dating someone that's your opposite, it really depends on what's the maturity level of the people involved and how conscious are they about what's going on between them. Because, say that you've got, two of the other archetypes we have in the system are the king, which is oriented towards people in the collective sense, is really oriented toward doing for and taking care of others, and thinks about society and family and group and values and all of that kind of societal and group-oriented stuff. And if that person is dating their opposite, in this case would be what we call lover or companion archetype, that's really oriented towards one-on-one and individual and romantic and more childlike and playful. And that can be wonderful and liberating and supportive mutually. But if it's unconscious, if the people are living out those archetypes very unconsciously, then it can get very cartoony. And what you end up with is, daddy taking care of the daughter kind of situation. And it can stay that way for 20 years or longer without much movement. But if there's consciousness in terms of, this is who I am and this is who you are, you can move to have each, bring more out of the other, make the father type, the king type, a little bit more loose and playful, and bring the daughter more towards the king type, more oriented towards society and group values. And there's a lot of mutual growth potential there. But for so many people, it's very easy to stay in a very immature place and just let the other person live all those values, and I'm going to live all these ones, and division of powers, and you don't step on my values and I don't step on yours, and you take care of me this way and I take care of you that way. And that can be a very limiting cage. So there's different ways all this can go, but you hit on a big point there.
Mm-hmm. So how would you work with somebody on their archetypes? Where would you start? Do you have a framework or a process that you go through?
Yeah, well, in the workshops, the first thing we do is a lot of education, getting people to see the world through this lens. So we show people a lot of films and talk a lot about these archetypes and the psychology behind them, and explain very basically, like you're saying, these oppositions in nature. So there's an opposition between the king type and the lover, seeker, companion type. The oppositions go these different directions. So having people understand this and educating them around it that's the trick. And this material is so psychoactive. It activates people so much that they start figuring out and really relating it to their own lives right away. And we use a lot of film examples and TV examples and historic and myth examples so that people really get it and understand it. And, the film is particularly powerful because, the films that we love the most tend to be the most archetypal films. Once you understand the system, you see, oh my goodness, Star Wars and Breakfast Club and Godfather and all these movies that we love are just absolutely archetypal dramas. And then you start seeing the whole world that way, and you really go, wow, okay, I get these different pieces. So a lot of how we work with people is education. And as you start to get the education, then it becomes living your life with this knowledge, and that's a lot of it. That's a lot of the process for us. And we have an ongoing, dialogue around this work that folks can participate in and be able to continue to share their understanding and to share, observations over time, with each other.
So you basically educate, you basically help them understand their archetypes by educating them and showing them examples.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And then it's sort of in that information seeping through their consciousness, it starts to clarify, well, I identify with the lover and less so with the queen or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So I kind of had imagined that there might be I don't know, some kind of, questionnaire process that you worked with somebody.
Oh, yeah, we do all that stuff, too. Yeah, there's a questionnaire, and there's, that kind of exercises and self-reflective work and all that, too, for sure. Absolutely, yeah.
So you've been doing this for a long time. So if you're out and about networking, meeting somebody new for the first time, do you know instantly what their main archetype is?
Yeah. Yes, I do. It's one of those things, people always ask psychologists that question, when you meet someone new, do you analyze them right away? Well, usually I say, not unless they're paying me to do so. But, with the archetype stuff, and it's so, it so defines our character that once you see it, you can't stop seeing it. And it's very obvious and easy, a lot of this stuff. So, yeah, right away, we start to pick up archetype. But there is, subtlety and depth to it. And, you can't always tell everything about somebody archetypally right away. And there's always that process with your friends and family about, discerning who's who and what's making them tick. But, yeah, I definitely do see it generally right away. And, that's fine. This is just human nature.
So, does everybody have one main archetype? Because we're quite complex, aren't we, human beings? I imagine that within a single human being, there can be many archetypes, many different aspects of the personality. So, I might be a sage and I might be a warrior. I might be a lover and I might be one of the other ones as well, or even a little bit of all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what we do find, for me, is there generally tends to be one way that we relate to the world personally, and how we, how our libido flows unconsciously towards people. There tends to be one archetype there. We're at one end of the pole that way. And we tend to be at one end of the pole in terms of how we relate to the world impersonally. So on the impersonal axis, on one end is the warrior and Amazon that I mentioned, and on the other end is the sage and the mediatrix. And your show is the mediatrix show about the medial woman, about being intuitive and understanding the world through the unconscious. So most of us do find ourselves either, understanding the world through knowing, as the sage does, as the magician does, through comprehension and that inner state of understanding and wanting to know how things work, or through doing, through activity, through prowess, like the warrior. And so most folks, we do find, relate primarily through one or two. But of course, we live in the world of all of them, and we all do all those things. We're all, it's healthy and good for us to be doing all of those things. But if you really look at people's lives and where they're really coming from, most folks do have one or two. And when you can be honest and conscious about that one or two, then you can go, okay, this is who I am. These are my values, and how can I serve the world the best? How can I give these gifts to the world? How can I take care of myself the best? What are my strengths and weaknesses? And I think it helps to speed people along. And, I did a workshop about a month ago here in Vancouver, and one of the people that was there said, geez, why aren't we learning this in high school? And I thought that was such a great compliment, because it is so defining in our character, these one or two that really make us who we are. And of course, on some level, we're all moving through all those things. We're all, it's like with personality type, we're all an extrovert and an introvert to some degree, but some of us are more extreme in different ways. And so that's really what this work is about, is owning and getting who we are and accepting it, and, I really getting conscious about what are my gifts and what's the, what am I here to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is something I'm very passionate about. I help people to do the same kind of thing in a slightly different way. And one of the things that sort of sprung to mind when you were talking, I was sort of thinking about, well, here we are all on planet Earth, and we're all going through a journey of expansion. We're all going through a journey of spiritual unfoldment. Every day we're expanding more, we're having more experiences, and, we're opening to more of what there is. So is it possible for a personality to evolve from one of these archetypes into another? Or do you think that you're born with this archetype in place and it really stays there for the whole of your lifetime?
Well, in my experience, it stays. In my experience, people have one or two that are the main two that will really be who they are for their whole life. Some of the people that have preceded me in this work have written books and really spent decades teaching this in the 60s and 70s and 80s. They talk about, in the second half of life, in the elderhood stage, you might sort of flip into a third archetype and change a little bit. I think that's possible, but I think it's important that we counter the tendency in our society that wants us to be everything all the time for everyone. That there's this mode in our culture that says, you're supposed to be, that a woman's supposed to be the lover and the mother and a career woman and this, that, and the other, and love all those things equally, and all that. And I think this work is about saying, we're not all that. We are limited individuals that are coming from a certain place, and that place is wonderful and beautiful. And I think it's liberating to own who you are and to stop beating ourselves up for not being everything, because we're not going to be everything.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Goal.
Yeah, we have so many expectations, don't we, coming at us from all around us, right, from the moment that you're born, from your parents and your family and everything else, and those expectations get internalized, and that's how we then expect ourselves to be and do everything. And so...
Yeah. And that's a huge part of this work, too, because so many people come into archetypal nature not able to see their own archetype right away. It takes them a little while because their parents or their family or society has really ingrained, that archetype's bad, you can't be that. And sometimes it takes folks a while to move through that kind of societal conditioning to go, this is who really I am. So that's a big part of this work.
Right, and the projections that other people have put on them, because, the parents are looking at them believing this is who you are, and inside who they are is not the same as the projection that is being presented to them.
It's usually who they want you to be,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I've been really enjoying this conversation with you, Gary. We'll probably have to wrap up in a few moments, but I have a few more questions. Why do you love doing this work? What do you get? What do you get out of it?
Well, first of all, this is who I am, right? It's talking about this kind of stuff is exactly what my archetype is all about, I'm the sage archetype, and we like to talk about ideas. So, it's personally, this is a fun conversation for me to be having with you. This is what I love to do. So it's completely, of my archetype to be doing this with you, and so that's my payoff. But it's very gratifying to see people respond so deeply to this work. They really. Folks, just when they get it, they really get it, and they, like I said, they go, "Geez, why didn't I know this growing up?" And it allows them to drop so much baggage that it's very, very gratifying. You're giving people something that they'll have for the rest of their lives, and there's not much better praise than you can get than that, and. I find it very gratifying to help people in that way. So help them drop the projections and accept themselves for who they are. And a common one that we get is that, women that don't necessarily feel like that, everything in their lives, all of their deepest satisfaction comes through mothering. If they don't feel that way, they can understand that, well, they're not of that archetype, and that they're not supposed to feel that way, and that's fine. And there's this other eternal, transcendent, sacred, beautiful story that isn't about mothering, that is there for them, and that's the way that they find satisfaction. And how wonderful to get people out of the trips that they're beating themselves up with. And so, it doesn't get better than that.
No, that's a good one, actually. I don't have kids, and, it's true, there's a lot of programming out there that's what you're supposed to want, and if you haven't done it, then there's something wrong. So I can see that can be very, very helpful for people.
Yeah.
So if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that? And if they want to connect with you and learn more about archetypes, how can they do that?
Right. Everything is right there at the website, archetypalnature.com. So archetypalnature.com. And you can contact me through the website there, and, we can go from there, and I can answer all their questions. We are doing a workshop on Vancouver Island this weekend, the 14th and 15th. And in Vancouver, the 21st and 22nd, and then I'm doing a webinar worldwide beginning March 14th on Saturday mornings, starting March 14th. So again, the website's archetypalnature.com.
Well, that's fantastic, and I would have loved to have a little bit of time to talk to you about your book, and unfortunately, we won't get round to it this time. But I'd like to invite you back, and we can do a show on crop circles. Before I let you go, though, so all of this really is about symbolism, isn't it? Whether it's the archetypal work or the crop circles, the connection is the symbolic nature of these things. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
Brilliant. Well,
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show, Gary. And
thank you, Leslie. Very fun chatting with you.
Thanks. And like I said, I'll connect with you, and we'll do a show on crop circles, because I'd love to find out more about that. That would be phenomenal.
All right, that'd be my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
That'd be my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Well.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. So, listeners, you've been listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie. That was Gary Bourbov talking to us about archetypes. We're going to go to a break now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie. My name is Dr. Leslie Phillips, and I am your host. And we just enjoyed a lovely chat with Gary Bourbov about archetypes. And we're now taking your calls. Hello? Hello?
Hello, Dr. Leslie. That was a really interesting talk Gary had, by the way. That was wonderful.
It was great, wasn't it?
Very informative. I have a question from Nancy that she's emailed in. And Nancy asks, having been on the spiritual path, clearing and healing for decades, I still feel like a fake. I simply can't get past this. And then little hyphen, and it's just help.
All right. We'll take a look then, Nancy, at that question. Gosh, I think there's an element in all of us that feels like that sometimes. So, but let me take a look at what's going on for you. And if you're tuning in for the first time, I'll just explain what I do. I actually go into a very light self-induced trance in order to look at Nancy and her energy and give her an answer to her question. So I'm just taking a moment right now to do that. And let's take a look. Well, it's interesting, Nancy, because if you've been listening to the earlier part of the show, what I'm seeing happen is exactly what I was talking to Gary about at the end of our chat, which is expectations. So it seems like you have some expectations about what it means to be on a spiritual path and what it means to be a spiritual person. And here's the thing. Spirit is who we are. It's what we are. So whether you are a Buddhist monk, whether you're the Pope, whether you're a shaman in the middle of the Amazonian jungle, or whether you're a street cleaner or a dishwasher or a politician, regardless, you are on a spiritual path. And, because that's who we are. That's the nature of who we are. But we create these ideals and expectations of what it is to be on a spiritual path and what it is to become enlightened and what it is to become this awakened person. And I'm seeing that that's what you're dealing with. You have these expectations of this place that you will reach, of this person that you will become, of this inner you that will be revealed to yourself and unfolded to you. And when you get to that place and when you become that person, that's when you will have attained the ultimate goal. And of course, basically what that does is it stops you accepting who you are, and it stops you accepting what your life is right now. And while on the one hand, I see that you are so very passionate about this spiritual work that you do. You love it, and it is who you are. But I'm seeing the reason that you say that you feel like a fake is because you're judging where you are now and you're expecting yourself to be somewhere else. But as always, you're exactly where you're meant to be. And you can't be anywhere other than in the present moment anyway. So may as well, accept and enjoy. So you're not a fake. You are spirit, and you are on a spiritual journey, and you are expanding your consciousness, and you are unfolding yourself in every moment. And I see that you are very connected with Source, and I see that you are actually quite consciously awake and aware within your physical body. And so, you got it going on, Nancy. You're not a fake, not at all. The only thing that's getting in your way and making you feel not good enough is yourself, and is these expectations that you're projecting and that you're having about what it means to be on a spiritual path and what it means to be a spiritual person. So let the expectations go. Let the disappointment go about not meeting the expectations, and then, work on accepting yourself as you are now. And I think that you will find that will help you with your question. All right, so we're taking other calls, or you can email at info@drlesliephillips.com. And hello?
Hello, Dr. Leslie. I have I have an email from Rihanna, Rianne. And Rihanna is asking, she says, I'm an intuitive and counsel others like you do. I do well in my quest and life. Then it stops dead. I have a good week, then everything dies off, sometimes for weeks. Can you see what the block is? Can you see what the block is that is?
That's a really great question, Rianne. Thank you for that question. I've actually had that question before. It seems to be a common theme for people who work in this intuitive realm. And I have my own kind of theories on it, but let me take a look at your energy, Rianne, and I'll give you a read on what's going on with you. So once again, I'm just going into a very light self-induced trance. That's how I tune out the physical world and tune into my inner world and my inner senses. And then I'm able to read somebody's energy. Doesn't matter where they are in the world, I can tune into them. So we're tuning into Rianne right now. And we're taking a look at... So it's interesting, and let me answer it by sort of drawing a picture. And the picture is, imagine peaks and troughs, hills and valleys, like a wave form. And I'm going to use this waveform symbol to describe two different things that are going on. The first one, well, again, we talked about it earlier with Gary. We talked about gosh, it's gone straight out of my head. Bear with me for a moment. The first thing that's going on is, we talked about the shadow side with Gary, so we'll get into that in a minute. But what I'm seeing is, if you imagine spirit and body, right? Spirit is high vibration consciousness, is non-physical. Body is low vibration material. It's in its form. So spirit is non-form and body is form. So you've got these two very different vibrations that are wanting to connect with one another and interact. And I'm seeing that what's happening is you're going in and out of alignment. So we talked about, that's what went out of my head. We talked about dichotomies. We talked about polarities. We talked about how everything, on this planet is in opposites. And I'm seeing that, you within yourself, you're going in and out of alignment with Source. And I'm seeing that if you ever watch any of that Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks, another way of saying is that you're going in and out of the vortex. And so I'm seeing that when you're in alignment with Source or in the vortex, then you're creating an alignment with Spirit. And that's the times when things are going well for you. And I'm seeing that when you're out of the vortex and when you're out of alignment with Source, that's when things are not going so well for you. And this is actually a natural part of the condition of being alive in a physical body on this planet. We're all doing this all of the time, going in and out of alignment. I'm in alignment, and then I lose myself. I go off into a polarity and I need to find myself again. And so that's what I'm seeing is happening. And of course, the difficulty is when you're doing this kind of intuitive work as your job, and that is how you make a living, then you're going to get the peaks and it's not like having an ordinary job, and it doesn't really matter whether you're in the vortex or not in the vortex. You go to work every day and you get paid. When you're operating in the way that you are, you've got it aligned with your survival level. And I'm just going to take a look at that survival level as another aspect of your question. Well, so here's the thing. I'm seeing that when you're in the good times, you have confidence in yourself and you have faith and you know that you are an amazing manifester and that you, can create what you want. And I'm seeing when you're in the darker times that you're not able to see that about yourself. And of course, here's the thing. The universe delivers to us whatever it is that we're putting out. And so the trick for you when you're in the downtime is to manage your vibration and manage your frequency and get yourself back into that vortex or that alignment so that you will attract more clients to you. The other thing I want to say about this, though, is that another part of what happens in these earthly existences that we're having is that we're constantly going through cycles of growth and change. So things never stay the same. Things are always changing. And sometimes we're in a cycle where we're out there in the world and where we're communicating with other people a lot. And other times it's a natural part of the cycle of life. We're going more inward, and we need more time for, we're shifting and changing inwardly. And sometimes, we judge ourselves because we think that there should be always something that's going on externally and out there in the world. But just because that's not happening doesn't mean that you're not changing, you're not expanding, and things are not moving forward within yourself. So that, Rihanna, was quite a long response to your question. Well, I hope it gives you some useful information. And, I guess I could have given you a faster and simpler answer, which would have just said, well, meditation. Meditation is one of the best ways I know. If you find yourself feeling out of alignment, if you find that things are the balance is starting to tip the other way, meditate. Meditate, get yourself back in alignment, release any ways in which you are judging yourself, any ways in which you are feeling afraid that you're not attracting clients or whatever it is. Use your meditation techniques to take control of your situation. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left in the show. I'll take one more question. And you can email info@drlesliephillips.com. Hi, do you have a quick last question?
Yep, I've got a question from Vic. Vic says, I'm a very frightened person. I feel like I'm never enough. Will I spend the rest of my life without a soulmate? Every relationship I ever had ended with me not being enough of a man, or any number of other expectations I can't live up to. Shall I give up on the ideas of having someone to love and hold at night when the loneliness creeps in? How can I come to terms with all this?
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to have to give a very quick answer to that. And what a shame. That would have been a great question to ask our guest that was on earlier in the show. All right, Vic. So just tuning in very quickly to you and your energy. And so here's the thing. We're on that subject of expectations again, and we're on that subject of projections again. So let's see where you're not good enough is coming from. Because, of course, it's a great big fat lie that you're not good enough. That's not true at all. You are good enough. How can you not be? You are a part of God, as we all are. You belong in this world and have a place in this world just as much as everybody else does. Just taking a look. And that's kind of interesting that, what's coming up is that there's a block. There's a block between you and your God, or between you and Source, whatever your concept of that is. And you're not seeing yourself as a part of that. And you also have these expectations that you have to be perfect. And your idea of and perfect in the context of perfect for whatever woman is in your life, according to her specifications of what perfect is. And so you're trying to mold yourself in accordance with somebody else's expectations. And that's not being authentic, and that's not being real. And that's you denying who you really are in order to do what you think will make somebody else happy. Gosh, and again, it would have been great to talk to Gary about this, because I think he would have told you, know yourself, learn what your archetype is, know who you are, and if that's not what somebody else, if somebody else believes that that's not good enough, that's not your problem, that's their problem. And so I think that, the main thing for you is self-acceptance, self-love, because if you love yourself and accept yourself, then the vibration that you'll be putting out in the universe is love and self-acceptance, and that will help you to magnetize a loving relationship into your life. All right, Vic, I'm going to stop there. I hope that helped you. And we are going to close up the show in a few moments. You can write to us in advance if you want, if you've got questions, or if you've got a request for something that you'd like us to cover in the show. You can write to me at info@drlesliephillips.com.
Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another Unlocking Your Truth podcast by Dr. Leslie Phillips. For more information, go to our website at drlesleyphillips.com. That's drlesliephillips.com, where you can ask questions or send her an email, and there's many free gifts on there for you as well. Come back again.